9 days later, I re-enter the world. Now I am really, truly broke. What the fuck is wrong with me? How dumb can you get? I've never been this bad before. When I was young, I lived to party, get drunk, snort coke, smoke pot, play loud, and fuck chicks. The kind of drinking I'm doing now is different. Self-devouring and ugly. More sinister, painful, and mature in a bad way. The way a tumor starts as a harmless gathering of aberrant cells and matures into something that will kill you if you don't get help. And even if you do, no guarantees. Yeah, that was crazy. So that was where I'm at now. Now at that point, I'm homeless. I've went from millionaire to homeless person. Mission accomplished.
That was Sam Herron, and this is the SHAIR Podcast.
It's time for the SHAIR Recovery Podcast, where we bring you amazing life-changing success stories from addicts and alcoholics all over the world who share their inspiring journey in recovery. And now, here's your host,
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the SHAIR Podcast. And today, let me start out by saying you do not want to miss this episode. Today, we have Sam Herron joining us on the show. He is the author of Street Life Fragments, where he photographs his firsthand experience of life on the streets as a man who is a former millionaire and whose personal tragedies and illness cast him into extreme poverty and ultimately into homelessness. This story is an absolute cocaine rock star, rock bottom interview. To date, it's one of my favorites. It's powerful, it's gripping, and it's an absolute miracle that Sam is alive today. Once again, you do not want to miss this episode. So let's dive into Sam's story. But first, if you have not yet rated and reviewed the SHAIR Podcast, please, one of the best ways to help support the show is to go to iTunes, leave us a 5-star rating and a review, and that helps catapult us up the ratings on iTunes, which will make it easier for more and more people to find the SHAIR Podcast. Now, in the past, many of you have asked, how can I help support the show? Well, I'm going to keep it simple for you. The first way is by donating via PayPal or Bitcoin. And of course, I want to thank all of our listeners who have been generously donating every month to the SHAIR Podcast. Make no mistake about it, you guys are making a huge difference. But again, we can always use more. And now you can even send us donations using Bitcoin. So if you go to the website, www.theshairpodcast.com, on the top right corner, there's a donate button. Click on that button and it'll take you to the page where you can donate either by PayPal or by Bitcoin. On a weekly basis, I have over 5,000 listeners every week who listen to the SHAIR Podcast. So if 100 of you guys would send me $5 a month or more, there are a few listeners that are sending $10, $20, and even $50 every month, that would completely support the show from beginning to end. So for those of you who have the wherewithal to send me $5, either by PayPal or by Bitcoin, then by all means, please feel free to donate now. We could really use the support. Also, when you're purchasing stuff on Amazon, there are those of you that are still clicking on the Amazon link on the SHAIR Podcast website before doing their purchases on Amazon. But again, there are thousands of you listening. If each and every one of you could just remember to go to the SHAIR website, click on the Amazon button before you do your shopping, that is also going to make a tremendous difference for us financially. So I haven't been one to emphasize it in the past, right? But now we've got a solid listener base. I know you guys love the show. I know you guys get a lot out of it. There are those of you, just like in the meetings, that are newcomers. The money's tight. Keep listening. The show will always be for free. The SHAIR Podcast private accountability group will always be for free. But for those of you who can, kick in a couple of bucks. Help us out here. And not to forget the SHAIR Podcast private accountability group. Again, it's growing like crazy. Guys, go to the SHAIR Podcast, www.theshairpodcast. Click on the button that says join the Facebook private group. For those of you that are in the private accountability group, you know how vital and important that has become. There's over 1,500 members in there. If you don't want to go to meetings, if you have problems connecting with people, if you need something more than just the podcasts and are not ready to cross over into meetings or some other structured program, then the private accountability group is perfect for you. Jump in there, make comments, ask questions, or just read the posts. There are so many people out there that have the same questions that you have. All you have to do is just read those and then read all the follow-up answers and responses that come. And make sure to subscribe to my weekly newsletter so you know every single time a brand new episode is launched. And of course, if you have any questions, just email me, at theshairpodcast.com, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. So now a quick message from our sponsors, and then on to the show. Would you like to join a free, anonymous online group that offers a daily topic email with popular recovery resources, accompanied by a secret Facebook group for discussion? Then go to dailyaaemails.com for more information about Transitions Daily. And don't forget to share dailyaaemails.com with friends, in meetings, and with sponsees in recovery. Sober Nation is the largest online recovery community and treatment resource center. They provide treatment resources to those struggling with addiction, as well as to the family members who are caught in the crossfire. On top of that, Sober Nation is a huge community of good people who share their experience with each other. They have informative content, recovery and addiction news, as well as an entire clothing line which helps expand the culture of recovery. They can easily be found at www.sobernation.com. Sober Nation is putting recovery on the map. Hey, Sam, thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Ro.
So, how are you feeling today?
I feel really good. Thanks for asking. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. All right. So, folks, today we have Sam Herron joining us on the SHAIR Podcast. And Sam is about to publish his first book titled Street Life Fragments, Stories and Photographs from Homeless America. Sam is a former millionaire whose personal tragedies, illness, and bad luck cast him into extreme poverty and homelessness. His firsthand experience of life on the streets at age 50 forces Sam to confront the dark side of the American dream at an age when recovery is improbable. Through the lenses of a pawn shop camera, he discovers a side of humanity he once feared and ignored. The insights gained through his art, along with heartfelt interviews with people suffering under the same conditions, help him transcend into a man with a selfless sense of purpose, compassion, empathy, and service. Did I get that about right, Sam?
I believe so.
Touched on some of the key points there.
In a nutshell, that would be the elevator pitch, as it's known as.
Good. All right. Well, I'll let you expand on that as we move forward. Fair enough?
That's fair enough.
All right. Well, before we talk about the book, let's talk about what you do normally in your daily routine, including recovery.
Fantastic. Well, I work for a long-term adult recovery facility with people with co-occurring issues of mental health, alcohol and drug use, and poverty. A lot of them are in the on court paper. And so that's very fulfilling. So currently, the vast majority of my day revolves around my work and preparing for it and being well rested and take care of myself so I can be of service to them.
Excellent. Excellent. Now, do you have a regular meeting routine? Are you still, are you active in 12-step recovery?
Well, to be honest, since I've moved to Lincoln, Nebraska, where I currently live and work, my work takes up an awful lot of my time, so I'm not as active as I would like to be. But generally speaking, I'm very active in it, and more in a listening role than a speaking role as I am today. But yeah, I get a lot out of it, and give a lot of credit to 12-Step for getting me to where I am today as a sober individual in recovery. Beautiful, beautiful. And how much clean time do you have? When is your anniversary date? Well, thankfully, I've got a couple of years now, and my date. Well, it's January 17th. Whether or not that was the actual date remains to be seen, but there was at some point a piece of paperwork that I think was intake paperwork when I got into recovery that said January 17th, and that's what I latched onto, and that's what I go by. Okay, what year was that? That had been a couple of years ago, so 2 years clean now. All right, excellent, excellent. And so how old were you the first time you drank or used drugs, and more importantly, how did they make you feel? Well, I came to the party, so to speak, fairly late in terms of kids that get involved in those things, but early in terms of how I ramped up the use. I didn't really start any of that until I was probably 17, I would say. I was actually walking from my high school a couple blocks up the street to a thing that we had that was a career center where we do metal shop, a wood shop, all those archaic things we used to do back in the 70s.
Right.
And I was a nerdy kind of art geek kid, and I was walking with two of my nerdy friends. But one of the kids that was with us is kind of a street tough, and he passed me a joint, and I hit on it. I have no idea why. My friends looked at me aghast, and they literally couldn't believe it. They're like, "You just hit on a joint." And I'm like, God, I did, didn't I? And it just got going from there because I was a very introverted, geeky kid. And I was like, yeah, I did that. And then it ramped up from there. I couldn't stand the taste of alcohol, and I never dreamt that I would ever start drinking alcohol. But eventually, like all young men of that age, women became of great interest to me. And so I went where they were, and where they were the parties, and the parties were wild and violent. And it was the 70s, and I lived in a town that was pretty crazy and went to a school that was not the greatest. And so that's kind of where the drinking started ramping up. And I hated it at first, but then I loved it after that. And the feeling, as with many, it just let me finally escape myself. And so, yeah, I ran with that for a while.
All right. Well, Sam, man, you are all warmed up, buddy. So it's time for me to turn this show over to you. Time for you to share your story, the battle against drugs and alcohol, the wreckage it caused in your life when you hit rock bottom, and finally your journey into recovery up until today. So Sam, take it away, buddy.
Well, thanks, Al. Well, I guess we'll go ahead and delve into things from that point. So I'm in school, and I finally start my drinking career. And I was a very introverted kid at that point, and that will allow me to digress just a bit. I was born George Walker. I'm the bastard child of the 101st Airborne, as I like to say. I was born in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. I was adopted by a U.S. Army Special Forces gentleman and his wife, my mom and dad. And soon after that, we moved to Germany, where I lived for quite some time until my dad developed what I believe to be a service-related cancer. And we returned stateside. He passed away after a extended battle with cancer. And at that point, my mom, who was very much in love with him, kind of lost it a little bit. And we moved in with her parents, my grandparents, and my grandfather, who was affectionately known. I came to find out later as the meanest man in the CB&Q Railroad, and it was a deserved reputation. But thankfully, at that point, he had stopped drinking. So that was good, because while there was things in his behavior, berating my mom and grandma, things like that weren't very gentlemanly. He had quit drinking, which is good, because apparently the last time he drank, he almost strangled my mom to death until my grandmother wielded some blunt object that left a lifelong scar in his head.
Wow.
Yeah, she had returned 10 minutes late from a date, and he was apparently drunk, and all his former Marine baggage kicked in. And I think there's a story behind what made him kind of the guy he was. And while he was a decent man, he was a very rough guy. And so he didn't respond too well. And my grandmother took matters into her own hands, thankfully. So my mom was alive to bring me up. But the home life, and when you're a kid, you really don't know the difference. Your family could be the most dysfunctional family around, and you really wouldn't know any different, because that's the only family you know. So for me, it was a normal upbringing. Yeah, you know what I mean. But in reality, there was some problems, and my mom, I believe, suffered from depression her entire life, and undiagnosed and untreated. And I think a lot of that rubbed off on me. So there again, how much of that rubs off on a kid, that remains to be seen. I'm sure the clinicians have discussed that ad nauseum, but I believe it makes a profound effect. And so, with the combination of being adopted and however a child is affected in utero, when a woman is carrying a child that they're going to end up giving up, that led to abandonment issues and my own share of depression. So by the time I got into school, I was pretty introverted and pretty depressed. So alcohol and drugs gave me the gave me the ability, the social lubricant I needed to meet the women that I was so interested in as a young man.
Yep.
Do you know how that goes?
Yes, I do.
That's what we do when we're young.
Yep.
So now I'm officially a partier, and it is the 70s. And so it was all about Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath and Ted Nugent and loud music. And I dove straight into that. But as the town that I grew up in was a little rough, and the school was very rough, and the parties were just, looking back on it, they were just batshit nuts. I mean, you had a combination of people carousing around, hitting on members of the opposite sex while beating the snot out of each other. Every 2 minutes a fight would break out. It was crazy. And I mean, people were plastered on acid does not mix well with bad temperament. So it was really an insane environment, but I was in it, and I always seemed to kind of be able to coast the middle ground. I was a quiet enough person. I was a nice enough person. So I managed to put myself in relation to close contact with complete chaos. And I always managed to get through it unscathed. So that was a talent that I learned early on. But by the same token, I was officially on the wild side, so to speak. So anyway, that all continued, and I went deeper and deeper into it. Eventually started selling a few things here and there in the drug related category without a license. I was not a licensed pharmacist. Let's just say that, and that allowed me to get the hot cars and things I wanted, and it allowed me to get a little closer to the women I was interested in, and that was my main preoccupation anyway. And that was a lifelong preoccupation until a few years ago. And not that I'm not interested in women anymore, but just not quite the way I was then. So. Again, the 70s, I believe every year probably has its challenges in regard to young people growing up. But I think the 70s were unique because at that time it was just that lifestyle was a little more acceptable. I think now that people realize the damage that's done, not so much. But back then, it was all about going ahead and exploring drugs and exploring other states of reality and acid and things like that. And I was big into it. I remember it got to the point where I could eat 8 or 10 hits of acid and function with no problem and do that for, a couple weeks on end.
Oh,
so it was crazy. Oh man, it was crazy.
That sounds like it would. I mean, how do you do that? And how long does that last? You after a while you get kind of used to it. So again, I mean, either you completely freak out and completely melt down, or you find a way to function on it. And it just got to the point where I could literally do acid day after day and just do large amounts and go to sleep. It was crazy. And I mean, crazy. This was stuff. Yeah, that's crazy, right? And it was stuff that would take you to an alternate reality. I mean, it was really like the jelly projections in the Pink Floyd shows back in San Francisco or the Grateful Dead. It was absolutely nuts. But I mean, there have been times where I was so high that it was literally like one of those 60s. I'm forgetting the name of the venue, but the venue in San Francisco where they would Woodstock?
In San Francisco. It's escaping me. Bill Graham was the promoter that used to put the shows on, but they had the projected things that were like if you took a petri dish and put jelly in it, and then you kind of put a light underneath it and projected it behind the band, that thing. Well, that would be how your reality would be. You would literally be seeing that when you were that high. And I remember doing MDA one night. I had run sound for a heavy metal band, which I'll get into that a little bit more later. But they were backing up a group that was real popular back then called Queensryche. And I had bought some MDA to sell, and I kept a little pure bag of it for myself that wasn't stepped on. And I did some of that, and it just came on so hard that it was just a mad dash to get home. And during the process of it, I got so high that, I literally went to where my reality was that jelly projection show. It was just like that. And oftentimes you're like, yeah, you really don't get that high, but you will get that high if you do enough pure MDA. That is a fact, and I would not recommend that.
Oh, well, you were doing 7-8 hits at a time, right?
Oh, well, with the acid, 7 or 8, 10 hits, no problem. But the MDA was a whole nother thing, too, because it was pure stuff. And as the guy who used to sell it to me that I would sell to other people would say, the dog is in town. And it was a wicked, wicked drug. I mean, that is some hardcore stuff. That's a real drug. And it is nothing to fuck with. So, that will put you in another reality. And I think that the night I'm referring to, I think it almost killed me. I was really amazed when I woke up the next day because I thought I was going to die that night. And quite frankly, there were many other times to come where I'm very lucky to be alive. And that's the grace of God for sure. So, anyway, so I'm in school. It's all about music for us at that time. And I was really getting into it. It was a complete escape for me, between the drugs and the booze and the music. I was able to get away from my problems. One of those problems would be when I was in junior high. And I guess I want to delve into this for the first time because it took me many years to kind of even remember it. I think I'd repressed the memory. But a lot of the clients that I work with in my job at the recovery facility, many of those folks are suffering from core trauma. And we do trauma-informed care. And so that's something that I'll touch on for that purpose. And for that matter, as long as I'm on the subject of our clients, I know a couple of the clients will be listening to this podcast, and I'm sure ones in the future will be too. So I just want to say to them that what you're doing is very brave. And I respect you greatly for taking the journey you're currently on. So at any rate, when I was in junior high, I had a school counselor, and quite frankly, I was molested by my school counselor, who was later moved to another state and was later convicted and sentenced to a long stint in prison for molesting many kids.
Man.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Right. With counselors like that, I mean.
God. Yeah, totally. Just it never sits well. It's always one of those things where you just get angry, and you wonder, it's as fucked up as it is. You wonder what kind of fucked up things that happen to them that would lead them to do those kind of things, because it just, as somebody who respects children, who has children, you know what I mean? It's hard to fathom doing those kind of things.
Oh, without question. Without question. It's almost assured that person, had a real rough road of their own. And so I'm sympathetic to that fact. And again, I mean, I endlessly at work, I endlessly deal with the profound effects that trauma causes on people. I don't know. I came from a generation where it was like, my family being German, hardworking German folks, you didn't even go to the doctor, let alone get therapy.
Right.
But, trauma was just glossed over, and you were just supposed to suck it up. But honestly, trauma will mess a person up for years, and drugs and alcohol are just the first place that people run to. Once they get a load of that, there's no need to process what they've been through. And if they're fortunate enough to get into therapy, that's great. But so for me, there was no therapy. And so after that happened, I shouldn't put it quite like that, because eventually it had such a profound effect on me that I would not go to school. And it got to the point where Child Protective Services was getting involved, and everyone was like, what is wrong with this guy? I would not go to school. And I finally found myself in a psychiatrist's office, because basically it was getting to that point where, I just literally wouldn't go.
Right.
And nobody could figure out. I couldn't articulate it. I almost, I guess, probably kind of repressed it even very quickly as a defense mechanism. So I found myself in a psychiatrist's office, and that it took a while for me to open up. But once I did, it was just a blessing. It was of immeasurable help, and I finally got back into school. But by then I was extremely damaged, and I was not doing well. I was a bright kid. I was a gifted student, and my grades were suffering, and they never got back on track. At one point, I was doing so well that I had interest. People were like, you're bound for the Ivy League, and I had my father's side of the family resided out in Connecticut, and I had already made visits to Yale and things, and so that conversation was already going. But then my grades just went to shit, and I just dove headlong into drugs and alcohol, and that's where I stayed for many, many, many years. So at any rate, at some point I began to play music but, I was super angry. So, I'd play for a while. I couldn't make any headway. I'd throw my instrument across the room. But at some point, after tossing the instrument around, which was thankfully durable, the thing didn't break. And I started to get a little bit better. And so that kind of led me into playing music quite often and then eventually professionally. So somehow I suffered through the 70s. I get into the 80s. At this point, I should also add that all this baggage is really taking its toll, because really right out of school, I met a woman that I probably should have married. She was my high school sweetheart. I couldn't really even believe that I was dating her. A woman named Valerie, who I touched base with about 2 years ago about 3 years ago when I bottomed out. And that was the first time I'd spoke to her in 30 years. But I was very much in love with her. But by then, I had so much baggage that I couldn't express anything. I was just a shell of the person that I was inside, and I was unable to express my feelings or emotions. And so there was my first relationship down the tubes because of the baggage that was bothering me. And so the drugs and alcohol again came into play, and I just stuck with the music. And so as that progressed, started getting better, played through a series of bands, and eventually ended up with a pretty good one. And now I'm a career alcohol and drug user. But by most standards, people, I was kind of had that Keith Richard quality to me. I could just keep it going, and I could keep it together. I could keep it together on a certain level. I never got DUIs, never got in trouble, hung around with crazy people, but never got caught up into it to the extent that I couldn't get out. So,
were you playing guitar or bass?
I was playing bass.
Okay.
I was playing bass and writing songs.
What was the name of the band?
The group that I eventually moved to Los Angeles and got a record deal with was a group called Grave Danger.
I'd never heard of that band. So did it go anywhere? How far did the band go?
Well, that's a story that I guess I can dive right into now.
Sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. I was going to get to it anyway. That group, we had a major label album recorded. At that point, when you get your first album in the industry speak, they would say that you're a baby band. And we had the largest baby band deal that anyone had got at that point in Los Angeles. It was a huge record deal. It was with MCA Universal. And we'd got that by virtue of being discovered on a large radio station at the time, KNAC radio. And it was the mid to late 80s. And so it was the era of Guns N' Roses and Metallica and Van Halen and bands like that. And so we were suffering in obscurity in that scene. And we weren't, at the time, there was a lot of what they would call like glam rock and hair metal.
Totally.
So we really weren't. Yeah, totally. And we really weren't that. We were kind of t-shirt and jeans guys, and we stuck with it. So we would end up being the first band on a slot, and nobody would be there. And by the time we were finishing playing, the room would start to fill. So that was very frustrating. But somehow through all that, we were discovered by a radio station and a filmmaker named Penelope Spheris, who happened to be a judge in this contest they held. So Penelope Spheris made The Decline of the Western Civilization movie and movies, follow-up movies, 3 of those, which just came out as a box set they re-released. And she also, you would probably know her from making Wayne's World and a lot of those Michael's projects. So at any rate, we got a small record deal due to that contest, but then that's when the major labels came calling, and we signed with MCA Universal. We made a record, cost an awful lot of money to make, took quite a bit of time, and quite frankly, it was really, really good. I revisited it recently. I don't listen to it often, but it would have been huge. And by then, we had started selling out places, and we would, show up at a venue, and there'd be limousines parked there, and there would be a line going, halfway around the venue. And eventually the fire marshal would show up to shut it down because it would be so full. And in the limousines would be anywhere from guys from Metallica, guys from Guns N' Roses, guys from Van Halen. You just never knew who was going to show up, and it was very exciting. And they were all really like, you guys are really going to be big. So eventually we got to the point where we were signed up with the Creative Artists Agency, CAA, and we were to go on tour with two of the biggest bands of the era. We were supposed to go out with AC/DC first, and then once that wrapped up, Van Halen was working on a new record. We were going to jump on that tour. So yeah, the band was big.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was set to go, and quite frankly, again, I mean, I think that, and that was the era too. With those two bands, their biggest selling albums happened on those tours were their biggest tours. The Razor's Edge for AC/DC was their biggest selling tour they ever did, and the same thing with Van Halen. And it was the era of MTV, so you were just selling insane amounts of records, and that probably would have been 3 to 4 years worth of work that didn't end up happening. So anyway, a couple of weeks before the release of the record, which we did with a guy named Michael Wagner, who did Master of Puppets for Metallica. He did Poison. He did Skid Row. He did a lot of the bands of that era. He even worked with Janet Jackson. You know, he was like, you guys are going to be huge, but I would strongly suggest that you put this record out as quickly as you can because I don't trust this label. He wasn't really too keen on working with them again because of something they had done to Kane Roberts, a guy who played with Alice Cooper, and they'd kind of fucked him over a bit. And Michael wasn't wild about working with him, but he wanted to work with us, and so he went ahead and did the record. But he was very clear about the fact that he's like, I really think you need to put this record out quickly. And I was lobbying to wait another quarter so that we would have more money for marketing, and that was a huge mistake. So as luck would have it, there was a person who was the interim head of A&R who was in a contract period of time renegotiating a new contract with Universal. And the person that was coming into the head of A&R position, her position is normally with soundtracks. Those two apparently could not get along, and it came to a head, actually. I believe it was at a party at the Beverly Hills Four Seasons after the Grammy Awards. And a friend of mine who worked at the Four Seasons called me up, and he's like, dude, your people got into a very ugly spat last night, and I don't know what was that about. And then first thing in the morning, I got a call from Penelope Spheris, and that was it. We tried to sign with another label, but by then we became what's known as damaged goods in the business. And that was effectively the end of that band's recording career.
Oh, so my God. That's like a nightmare.
It literally was a nightmare. But it was a great excuse to dive headlong into drugs and alcohol.
Oh, yeah. Dude, the pity party.
Oh, man. Well, I mean, it was full-blown depression. I mean, because I had literally worked my entire adult life for that. And that was something like when I was a kid reading Rolling Stone magazine and seeing celebrities hanging out at parties, I'm like, I'm going to be at those parties. And then I was. And so it was a lot to get over. I mean, it was traumatic. You know, I can't downplay it. It threw all of us for a loop, and it threw me into about a 2-year headlong, full-blown depression because at that point, I've literally invested my entire adult life in that project, and it was 3 weeks from coming to fruition. So that was a heartbreak. But unfortunately, instead of going to therapy or finding some more constructive way of dealing with it, I dove headlong into the plentiful world of the 80s Los Angeles cocaine epidemic. And that was it. I basically didn't do a whole lot for 2 years other than snort tons of coke, drive away the girlfriend I was living with at the time, who was wonderful, and just dove headlong into a very, very, very dark place.
Now, you had mentioned when I opened up, it says, you were a millionaire. Is this pre-millionaire or is this during the millionaire? I mean, was it the band that was, where you were making the money, or did that come later?
Well, the band, I mean, we were already turning down, publishing and merchandising deals well into the six figures for each of us. But we had made enough money to where I had a manager and I had a business manager. And so I took the money that I had and I invested in the stock market per my business manager's recommendation.
Shit.
And I was fortunate because at that point in time, it was the .com era was starting to break.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so it wasn't bad. So in reality, I mean, that just made me a shitload of money.
Got it. So you actually rode the internet wave.
Oh, yeah. Rode it big time, rode it to great riches too. So I just kept piling away. I didn't take anything out. I wouldn't even touch that. And I just kept reinvesting in everything. And I made an awful lot of money in that. And it just kept going. And then at that point, to be honest, I took a great interest in stocks. I thought, wow, this is really kind of fascinating stuff. And so that was about the time that you started having the wonders of search engines and things like that and business channels. And so I kind of, I took a great interest in that and took an active participation in my portfolio, and that enhanced it greatly. And by then I was making a ton of money, and I didn't have to get up for work. I didn't have to go to work. My work was literally getting up in the morning, drinking that beer was laying next to the bed, that by now warm beer or two, and then getting up and looking at a ticker tape, making a few phone calls, and that was it, and watching the money roll in. But that is not a lifestyle that is conducive to sobriety or good health. Right. And so again, that just, between being a musician and carousing clubs at night, with the likes of Ice-T and Billy Idol and all the people that I would see on a nightly basis, that was just a batshit nuts lifestyle. But then from that, which, allowed me not to work, then I was by now in the investment world. And that was the same thing. It just allowed me to tear myself apart and on a nightly basis, get up in the morning, kind of pull it together as best I could after throwing up and spending half of the day with a wicked hangover. And then, just rebuilding for the night to come. And then the night to come would be more of the same. And the party just didn't stop.
Good Lord.
It was crazy. Los Angeles in the 80s. Wow.
I was just about to say the rock and roll cocaine horror story.
Oh, 80s Los Angeles was just insane. And I got to be honest, it was a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah, totally.
Oh man, it was crazy. And the thing was, everybody, you'll read these memoirs, like say, for example, the Guns N' Roses guys or Nikki Sixx's excellent book, The Heroin Diaries. I was in that orbit with those same folks. I've read those, we literally, the guys in the recovery program, my clients have a penchant for going to the library and getting all those kind of hardcore memoirs by rock stars.
Right.
So I've read all the Guns N' Roses ones, and I've read Nikki's excellent Heroin Diaries. And I literally, it's like, I know that person. I know that person. I know that person. I know all these people. It was just crazy. And, again, I was hanging around with all those folks on a nightly basis, and the drugs and the women just never stopped. It was more insane than, as much as I can talk about it, it was much more than that. So it was a lot of fun, but it was, again, not conducive to acceptable norms of behavior, shall we say.
Well, it's a hedonistic lifestyle devoid of any spirituality. It's all ego-based, and at the time, it's feeding every single, narcissistic bone in our body. How could you even take a minute to think about the vacuous existence that you have when you are riding the party train of your life? Oh,
without question. it was morally bankrupt and spiritually devoid. That's a perfect way to put it. It was all about ego-driven, egocentric activities, and they don't call it cock rock for nothing. It was just nuts. It was total and complete hedonism. I would have to spend the entire podcast recounting the things that happened in those clubs on a nightly basis that would just blow everybody's mind. It was an absolute bacchanalian feast. It was batshit crazy, batshit nuts. It's amazing. And the thing was, unbeknownst to me, deep down underneath all that was this kid that was the geeky kid that wanted to go to college and wanted to have a family. But that person had been repressed through the lifestyle that I was leading. The person that I really was, the person that God intended me to be, was buried underneath all that crap. So it was just go out and destroy myself on a nightly basis, and never get in touch with the person that I was intended to be and the reason that I was on earth in the first place. So it wasn't until recently that I was able to finally become, or at least begin to become, the person that I should have always been in the first place. Hence our pre-interview conversation about returning to school.
Correct.
So, yeah. So anyway, just to pick up again. So at that point now, the band is over. I go into a pretty dark place, but somehow I managed to get out of that. I go to work where a gentleman named Kevin Lyman, you would know him as the creator of the Coachella Festival and the Vans Warped Tour before that. So I began to do production work back in Los Angeles. We would do like the Hollywood Palladium, Hollywood Palace, and then we'd do all the big tours. And so we'd be hired out for those things. And we worked with everybody, Tool, Rage Against the Machine, Nine Inch Nails, all these great bands, Red Hot Chili Peppers, you name it. And I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed working for Kevin. And so now I'm starting to kind of finally get out of, starting to pull it together a little bit. I'm backing off on the drugs and alcohol. I'm working on my bass playing. I'm working on my songwriting because I had blown some substantial opportunities along the way. And I believe, a chance at one point to go to work for CAA by a person who was Bob Dylan's rep. And he saw something in me I didn't see in myself. And unfortunately, I squandered those kind of opportunities. But I was trying to pull it together and build a life from the wreckage. So things were going pretty well, and we recorded a second record that we funded ourselves. And again, I think that record was really good. But right around that time, and I should also add that a couple of very well-known bands came calling. There was one I was extremely interested in getting with that I didn't end up getting auditioned, but that built a relationship with their manager that eventually led to the possibility of joining a group called Alice in Chains.
Oh, wow.
Bass player. Yeah, whose bass player notoriously died from death by misadventure.
Yep.
Yeah, well, a friend of mine got that gig, and at first they weren't, they really liked him as a person. They liked his playing, but then once they got in the studio to work on the Last Action Hero soundtrack, they were doing a song on that. They were a little unsure, so that's when I got the call, would you be willing to come up and audition if need be? And that's where that relationship from the interest in the Soundgarden gig came up. Mike ended up keeping that gig. He's their current bass player. He's done a great job, and he's made plenty of money in the process. And they were just on the road with Guns N' Roses this last tour, so good for them. And I finally touched base with Mike on that tour after about 20 years, and that was interesting. He hasn't aged a day, but that's what good living will get you.
Yes.
He was never that crazy guy. He was never that guy going out and getting shit hammered. So at any rate, so I'm building it back up. But then right around that time, my mom came down with cancer, and I literally had a phone call that changed my life. And I had been at the late great country club in Reseda, seeing Henry Rollins play the night before. And then the next day I woke up to a phone call that my mom had terminal cancer. And that literally within hours took me back to Chicago, where I spent 9 months watching her pass away from a cancerous brain tumor. And that was just a horrific experience. And that's kind of when what was left of my family kind of fell apart. And shortly after she passed away, my two best friends passed away in short order. One of them was from drugs and alcohol, and the other one, who was a surgeon, passed away from cancer as well. So the person that died of drug and alcohol abuse was a multimillionaire that lived down in Mexico, right down in the Riviera Maya, as they call it these days, in a place called Acamal. So I spent an awful lot of time down there. And that just got so crazy that I couldn't even go down there anymore. And by now, I'm worth my, more than my share. And interestingly, she tried to put me in her will, which would have left me an inheritance of many millions. And I actually turned it down because that's just how crazy I was at that point. I mean, who turns down that kind of money?
This is your mom.
No, this was my best one of my two best friends that was a multimillionaire who drank herself to death, that lived down in Mexico.
And she was going to leave you a fortune.
A fortune, a literal fortune, and the house down in Acamal, which is a mansion right on the water, and it's currently for rent for people who are vacationing. I took a look at it recently on the internet, and it's a beautiful place. And I turned all that down. I should have just took it and gave it to charity. But again, I mean, it can't be overstated how insane a life I was leading. I literally was operating in a reality that is unfathomable at this point to a sober individual.
But there has to be something somewhere in the subconscious that prevented you from doing that. Was it just the thought that if I get this money, I'm going to kill myself doing drugs and alcohol? I don't deserve it. There has to be something. I mean, what was the first, I'm not taking that. I'm turning it down. What was that?
Well, I think you just hit the nail on the head. I think it was a combination of all those things. I mean, there's the I don't deserve it component, because that was what drove everything. I mean, I was like, you're no good. You don't deserve it. You don't deserve a good life. You don't deserve anything. And that's why you must tear yourself to pieces on a nightly basis. You have to destroy yourself because you are no good. And that, again, goes back to core trauma. You know, that's where the family dysfunction, those are the things that lead people deep down dark paths into addiction, because, you know, you have all this unaddressed baggage that you most likely have not been into therapy. So you haven't sorted through any of that. So it was that. And then the people she was hanging around with by then were not people that you would want to associate with. And it just was something I didn't want to get into. And then on top of that, I figured, at that point in time, they were too crazy for me to even hang around with. And they led to her being dead within a few years after them coming out of the woodwork when she inherited all the wealth she had. So I think on some point, your other allusion to the fact that I thought it would enable me to finally get myself out of the door due to drugs and alcohol and death by excess. I think that was a component of me turning all that down too. But again, I mean, it just everything in my life was crazy at that point. It was just nuts. So. Wow. Yeah, so I got through all that, but the damage was, the damage was piling up, and it was taking a toll. And so after the death of those people, my mom and my two best friends, and my two best friends passed away in very short order. And that just led to ramping up to the next level of addiction and alcoholism. And therapy, unfortunately, was never something that was even considered. Would that I have had someone just say, look, you're a mess, you need to get into therapy, but that didn't happen. So now I'm just ripping through my fortune. I'm not making any good decisions, and everything I'm doing is just going nuts. And at this point too, I got back into motorcycles, and so now I'm blowing all my money on custom bikes. I'm riding with a lot of really crazy individuals, and that takes me into that world, and the world of custom motorcycles and that craziness. That just, I'm riding with the top of the food chain bike designers, but that lifestyle is absolutely crazy. And one of my best friends was a notorious biker in that world, and it led him into swerving in over a double yellow line and hitting another drunk individual down in Florida, and it led him to prison time. And he was a guy who had a television show with Spike TV pending. So, I mean, it was just, we were all living this life of complete biker excess. So that led me down, I'd had the rock and roll world mess me up, and then now I'm in the biker thing. And so, when I go out to the garage, I got a couple $100,000 worth of custom bikes out there, and we're talking, old Indian Larry style knuckleheads and shovels and things like that, and things that go super fast like the twin cams. And I'm just into that world completely now, and I'd found a new way to destroy myself. And at that point, I'm just going through money hand over fist, and I just didn't give a fuck. And so it was just complete excess. I'd blow all my money on meals to keep myself relatively healthy, and then in the evening I would explore the dark world of these towny bars that were just shitholes with drug dealers left and right. And I'm back in my hometown, which is riddled with gangbangers and drug dealers. So basically I'm spending every evening, sitting at the same seat in the bar night after night after night with a bunch of gangbangers and drug dealers. And if I'm lucky, a bunch of batshit nuts bikers with their bikes parked outside. So it was just absolute darkness and chaos and insanity. And I was absolutely out of my mind by that point. So I'm going through my money left and right. And I'll never forget that there was a day I was in a bar. I went to use the ATM to get some money out, and I was down to $120,000. And I thought, I'm down to $120,000. I'm going to go all the way down to homelessness. And, it was $120,000. That's a lot of money. But to me, I mean, that was nothing. Yeah. To me, I was broke. And again, at that moment, in the back of my mind, I knew I was going to go all the way down into homelessness. And eventually I got there.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Pretty crazy.
Ooh, crazy.
Yeah, really crazy. So I finally got there. I'm just making one bad decision after another.
But you're not working, right?
No.
You're not working or anything. You're just spending money like a beast. Just running around, the ego just flaring around, cocaine, alcohol, women, the same thing every day, repeat, right?
Oh yeah, it's like a bad Groundhog Day.
Yeah,
everything is just a Groundhog Day of excess and chaos and self-destruction. I mean, that's all it is. I was absolutely by that point, I was absolutely miserable. I hated my life. I hated the life I was living. But the thing is, you just at that point, it's. You there's part of you that wishes you could get out of it, but you just don't know how. And I think that's something that people don't realize about addiction and alcoholism is that when you're that far in it, you're not going to get out. The only way out is through treatment, is through some sort of intervention, some sort of assistance, and to get into a recovery of some sort, be it if you're lucky, you can just go to a 12-step program, or you can go to AA meetings or NA meetings. But if not, a full-blown recovery for a long period of time. But those things were never considered, and no one I knew, they were just dropping dead. They were living that life of excess, and no one cared. No one cared about each other. It was just, like you said, it was ego driven. And back to the motorcycle thing. I mean, that's all ego driven. These were all ego driven pursuits. So there's nothing healthy about it, and it was just a horrific, bad. It was like a bad record skipping. I mean, it was just terrible. So there was no consideration for getting out of it. And again, that's where hopefully people who are not addicts and alcoholics can have a more healthy empathy for people who are, because again, once you're in it, you're probably going to go all the way down. Unless you're extremely lucky, you're going to become a low bottom alcoholic or a low bottom addict. So that's where I ended up. The house went, the investment portfolio went away. The motorcycles went away. The house went away. I've downsized into a condo that's not mine, and I'm living well beyond my means. And by now I'm just making insane decisions. And eventually I end up with no money. And, all I'm doing is drinking. And it finally got to the point where I went 12 days without eating, and I'm just trying to drink myself to death. I'm not consciously trying to drink myself to death, but there's no question that that's what I was doing. And at that point, I reached out to one of the only friends that I had left, because by now I've trashed every good relationship, every good friend. And I asked a former girlfriend in Omaha, Nebraska, if I could come out and stay with her. And there was the longest pregnant pause on the other end of that phone call that I've ever heard. It was, she was not quick to answer, and she was not wild about the idea of me moving out there, but she took pity on me and let me move to Nebraska, and that's what brought me here. So I came out to Omaha to try to pull it back together. I'll never know how I made the drive from the Chicago area out to Omaha. I got 24, I think it is, miles to DeKalb, Illinois, to a Oasis, and pulled over, got a large Starbucks, and I just thought, I can't do this. I mean, it was all I could do to get 24 miles. I mean, I've been essentially 2 weeks without eating. My friend in Omaha had sent me out a little money to get me out there, and I got one or two meals a little bit in me. I had a friend of mine who said he literally saw the color come back into my face because I had a gray pallor from going that long without eating, and it was just pure whiskey. Yeah, pure whiskey and no food. So somehow I made it, by the grace of God, I made it out to Omaha, Nebraska, and took about 2 weeks to kind of get my health up to where I could look for a job. And I'm a guy who hasn't worked a real job in quite some time. So I go to work in a factory for a Fortune 500 company, working in a machine shop like I did when I was fresh out of high school. And that was some real hard work, and production work with steel. And that in some ways was a bit of a blessing because it kind of got me to the point where, it was physical. So my physicality was getting better and I was actually sober. One of the conditions of moving out here was my friend that I was staying with was like, you cannot drink. And when I say drink, you mean not only can you not drink in my house, you cannot drink if you're going to stay with me. That's the conditions.
Right.
And, so 3 or 4 months into that, that job was not a treat. And there's a long story that goes with that, that essentially led me to a workplace, injury. I basically got heat stroke on the job. I won't get too far into that. We get too far afield if I do, but, eventually things got pretty rough over there. And, that kind of led me to, eventually, drink and having the occasional drink. And by then I met a girlfriend who's talked about by a different name in the book. And I moved in with her and she drank and that got me back into drinking and she kept whiskey around and I liked whiskey when I would do my nightly part in our festivities, shall we say, adult conjugal festivities. So, the whiskey would fuel that. And whiskey was my Achilles heel in that regard. I like to get my growl on. So anyway, eventually that kind of sucked me back into the alcoholism. And that situation was really bad, and that's best read about in the book Street Life Fragments that'll be coming out with any luck in May, but it'll come out at some point. And that kind of chronicles, that picks up from exactly that point. And so essentially the book Street Life Fragments takes you into, it begins with the ending of that relationship with that person. And so,
okay.
Right. So at that point, I'm being escorted out of my house by 6 police officers who are armed and pointing weapons at me. That woman had gotten an order of protection against me, unbeknownst to me, and that was essentially her way of breaking up with me. So it came to light once it went to court that I was not the first person that was visited with this way of breaking up, and the judge admonished that person for exactly that. So there was no basis for it, but by the same token, now I'm on the street literally, and things just get really crazy. And then from there, I'm sleeping in my car. But I've called together enough money to keep my booze thing going. And I have a friend of mine who was a notorious security guy in Omaha, a former Marine who went to Bosnia at 17. And he put me up for a couple of weeks, gave me a couple of weeks to kind of get my shit together, which of course I didn't. But that led me into what he termed the Great Bender of Aught 12. And during the Great Bender of Aught 12, I took drinking whiskey to a level the which I'd never been. It was Jim Morrison-like in its epic nature. And I think at this time, if it's okay with you, I'd like to read a little bit about that as best I can from the book.
Go for it.
Okay. So at this point, I'm staying with my friend Sean in a Section 8 place in downtown Omaha. And I've been through 3 huge handles of whiskey in short order. And I'm getting to the point where I've never been drunk at that level. And so here we go. When I escape the apartment to grab another bottle, it's like leaving a movie theater and finding daylight. Time's become a metaphor for something that happens elsewhere, signaling nothing, unrelated. I've been drinking for 4 days now. The guy behind the counter takes the handle of Jameson and scans it with one of those sensors that draws a spinning red laser globe over the barcode. I hand him a 20 and I tell him to keep the penny. It's $24.76, he says. I pull out another 5 and I put the quarter in my pocket. I smoke a cigarette in the snow and I walk back to Sean's. Must be around noon. Cars head downtown, captained by well-dressed and sober, probably for a nice fat meal people. No one will bother to check the price out because they won't need to. How many of them will sleep in their cars tonight? Back to the apartment and the putrid smells of Sean's bunker It's like he brought Bosnia back to America. The urgency and fear of battle invades his taxpayer-funded hovel, deranging the natural human aversion to filth. When you're under fire, there are more important things than cleaning. What matters are the strength of the walls and the safety of your comrades. Your own well-being can go to hell. After a few days, I get to feeling like I'm in the bunker too. The only thing missing is the gunfire. Sean still hears it though. He screams in his sleep. Night terrors, worse than nightmares. His screams jolt me from the couch where I take naps and half sleeps whenever my head throws the room into spin cycle, meaning that I'm shit hammered at that point. Sometimes his dreams get so bad that I have to leave. I walk a mile past windows and the Douglas County Jail to get down to the old market, searching for what? Everything. At one point, I travel so far I'm not even in Omaha at all, but Chicago, stumbling up the sidewalk to my old girlfriend Trang's house to see if she'll take me back. It's been almost a decade and I'm still hooked. I ring the doorbell. A stranger in a yellow security t-shirt opens. Oh, hello, I say. I walk into a noisy, full of burnt Nicaraguan tobacco leaf and leather shoes, looking for the love of my life across a sea of heads and faces. It must be one hell of a party. A band's playing in the corner. Men smoke cigars. Waitresses veer between the tables and hand out drinks and scribble orders. I have questions. I'm too fucked up to ask. When did Trang install a walk-in humidor? Why is there a cash register? Where did that Havana garage sign come from? The house sure has changed. So at that point, I'm so shit hammered that I'm just literally, thinking that I'm back in Chicago, and what really was happening is I'm drunk on my ass. So I guess that's a way of kind of summing up what a blackout would be like.
It's more like a brownout, because you remember it, right?
Well, I mean, I guess it was what I used to refer to as a brownout, but now I'm not so sure because after hearing Sarah Hepola, who has an excellent book, her Blackout book. I don't know if you're familiar with her.
Yes.
She is fantastic. That book is fantastic.
Yes.
And the way she describes a blackout is what we would describe as a brownout.
It's, I guess, blackout, brownout. It's
whatever.
It's a matter of exactly. You are fucked up.
Oh boy, it's just a matter of semantics. But the thing is, I guess in that regard, that's why I kind of sum it up like in the way that I did, just to give you an idea of what it's like. So anyway, I pick up from there. It's like 9 days later, I re-enter the world. Now I am really truly broke. What the fuck is wrong with me? How dumb can you get? I've never been this bad before. When I was young, I lived to party, get drunk, snort coke, smoke pot, play loud, and fuck chicks. The kind of drinking I'm doing now is different. Self-devouring and ugly. More sinister, painful, and mature in a bad way. The way a tumor starts as a harmless gathering of aberrant cells and matures into something that will kill you if you don't get help. And even if you do, no guarantees. Yeah, that was crazy. So that was where I'm at now. Now at that point, I'm homeless. I've went from millionaire to homeless person. Mission accomplished.
Wow, man, that is just like I said. It's your Hollywood rock star cocaine rock bottom story.
Yep.
And they all end the same.
Oh boy.
There's no escaping it, and there's no way out of it for many of us until you just absolutely hit rock bottom. And then you're out of money, and it's the only reason why you stop. You're either out of money or you're dead, or you're arrested, jails, institutions, and death. But for you, it's just this crazy roller coaster ride. So then, what was it? Because you, at some point, at this particular stage in the game, you could have either killed yourself, but you chose differently. So what was that rock bottom moment that brought you to recovery?
So at that point, I'm living in my car, and I'm still going to I'm going to little art openings, gallery openings, things like that. And I kind of got this reputation for pulling out this little $50 pawn shop camera that I had. And people started noticing that I took good pictures. And then at some point, I'm living in my car. Literally, I'm homeless. I'm going days and days and days without eating. It was nothing for me to go 6-7 days without eating. It was just almost a badge of honor to know that I could do it. And I would walk by people in restaurants down the old market of Omaha and see that they were having these fabulous meals that I used to have. And now I'm a guy who's taking pride in the fact that I could go days without eating. So it was pretty warped. But at some point, and there's a story behind it, but I finally crossed the precipice to where the homeless folks that I would encounter as I was homeless, I began to talk to them and ask their permission to take photographs. And so that's when I began to take the photos that would kind of get me out of my car inevitably. But in the meantime, I literally got to the point where I was at the very end. I mean, I was contemplating things that are unspeakable, and I had lost all hope. I mean, I was a godless, hopeless mess. And a man named Bob Schellenberg, who I met once prior through an introduction from a friend, took pity on me and got me off the street. He had seen my photographs. He had read, by then I was writing about my exploits, and that was getting attention. And he took me in and gave me the opportunity to get off the street, and I'm forever grateful to him. It's just one of those things where it kind of restored my faith in humanity. Like, who does that?
Right.
And he was, you know what I mean? And he was a lifelong educator and just a great man. And he is a great man. And if it weren't for him, I don't know what would have happened. But, God works miracles if you let him. And, they say St. Augustine said the absence of, or evil is the absence of good. And at that point, I'd pushed everything good out of my life, but apparently Bob had other ideas and God worked through him. So I got off the street, and that allowed me to continue to, by now, my story's getting out there. And so I ended up on television through another story I won't get into, but that exposed people that I was homeless and that didn't know. And along the way, a man named Morong Chiang, who's the head of the Asian World Center at Creighton University, arranged for me to have a photographic show of my photos, and that put me on the front page of the local papers. And then that's what ultimately led to the book deal. Loyola is a Jesuit university, and Creighton is as well. And so that's what led to that, and that's inevitably what led me to finally, after long last, getting into a treatment program in Omaha's Siena Francis House homeless shelter. It's called the Miracles Program, and it was a miracle. It was a blessing for me, and it was definitely a miracle that I was ever able to walk in those doors. And when you walk in the doors of a homeless shelter, at first it's kind of terrifying when you know that that's where your life has led you. You've went from being a wealthy person to walking in late at night into a homeless shelter, a wet homeless shelter, which is meaning that people who are intoxicated are welcome. And that's where life has taken you. That's where your exploits have taken you. It's one day you're hanging out with Johnny Depp, and the next day you're in a homeless shelter. And that's where I ended up. But it was a good thing because part of being in the Miracles Program is that you are working with the homeless population as you're in your recovery program. And by the time I walked in the door, I had surrendered. I was 100% ready. And when you ask your final questions later, I'll touch upon how God kind of entered my life. But that took me to that homeless shelter, to that recovery program. But it also allowed me to be of service to others. And that was provided me with a lot of strength, and then ultimately led me to what I do today, which is working in recovery.
What a miracle, man. Like, what a crazy story, bro. Like, seriously, man. Like, wow.
Yeah, I know, isn't it? Isn't it? And and I unfortunately had to live through it to get a book out of it. I wouldn't recommend it as a subject matter, but that's kind of how it got where it got. But as I say, live through this.
Well,
good luck.
Yeah. And you had so many challenges. What I kept waiting to hear is that at some point, somebody's going to pick you up to play bass in one of the bands, right? Like at some point, why doesn't that shift? Yeah, the band breaks up, but you can still play bass. It wasn't in the cards. It just was not in the cards for you to be in the business. And plus, if you did find your way, you'd be one of those casualties of war. There's no way you would have made it out of there alive if you were part of those bands, if you were Keith Richards, so to speak, right? Because there's only one Keith Richards. And then also when you think about just starting from the beginning where you're adopted, right?
Yes.
You're adopted and, you're molested in high school and back in a time where people, like you say, they don't discuss these things. They don't want to discuss these things. Either you're too ashamed to discuss it or you've already blocked it away. And then if you do say something, people are so uncomfortable with the idea that they just want to push it under the rug somehow.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Guilt and shame. Guilt and shame.
Absolutely. So you tell your parents about this and they're like, no, you must be wrong. No, maybe you're overreacting.
Oh, well, honestly, in my case, I never even said anything about it. I was so ashamed and felt guilty. I felt like you're so confused when you're molested. You're so confused that you don't know what just happened. Or but then you quickly build your defense mechanisms and repress it. In my case. And it just was never, I didn't discuss that with my mom until I was in my early 30s. That's when I remembered it. I literally repressed that memory for years.
You know what's I guess ironic or funny or however you want to talk, whatever you want to say. The last 3 interviews I've had have been with people that were adopted, and look at where you end up. However you want to look at it, at some point you say, what was wrong with me? Why? What happened? Why am I adopted? Why am I different? And so there's so many things that lead up to this kind of sort of ambiguous existence that you try your best to figure it out and you rack your brain and then you find drugs and you're like, wow, I don't have to rack my brains anymore. It all makes sense. And all the chatter goes away and all the insecurity and all the guilt, all the shame, it's gone. Give me some more of this stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's the coping mechanism. And especially at that age too, when you're in high school, that's when you need to develop those social skills and develop coping mechanisms, to develop these healthy things that normal adults take with them into adulthood and are able to live a functioning, healthy life. So you're not developing the skills that you need at that point. And that's why weed, there's studies that have been done that, individuals who are smoking weed prior to age 15 or around that age, it's doing damage to the hippocampus and the brain. Permanent damage, rewiring the brain. So it's, it's just crazy. But again, the abandonment issues are very powerful and core trauma.
Yes. Yeah. No, absolutely. And so when you were out in the streets and you were, taking these photographs, how long were you out in the streets taking these photographs before you actually got noticed?
Well, I was on the street for about a year.
Oof. Wow.
I know. And that sleeping in the car, I was lucky to have a car because I don't know what I would have done, but sleeping in the car in the middle of the winter in Omaha, Nebraska, a town that you are not familiar with, having just moved there, is it's a very dark place. It's a very lonely, godless, dark place. And I prayed and prayed, but I just wasn't connecting. Unbeknownst to me, of course, God was already working in my favor by virtue of the photographs, and they were so powerful, and the stories were powerful, and the fact that the individuals I was photographing and talking to, we truly made a connection. So they're unlike a lot of photographs that you might see of the homeless population, because these are people that I was legitimately friends with, and many of whom I continue to be friends with. So they have a special quality to them that's unusual.
Of course. Now, are there any ones in particular that come to mind, while you were out there and, meeting these people, interviewing these people, talking to these people? Was there one in particular that you'll never forget or had a significant impact while you were out in the streets?
I could say there are several. There are 3 that immediately come to mind. One of them was a person who, during a drug-induced haze, was violated and molested, sodomized, and he got AIDS from that encounter, and that was covered in Matthew Hansen's story in the World Herald, the cover story. And yeah, that was a heartbreaker. A really nice kid, not unlike many of the people that I work with currently. Just a really nice kid. But yeah, he got a HIV out of the deal. There was another gentleman who came from Somalia or Sudan, I think it was from Somalia, who was involved in, they're child warriors at that point, and then there's so much war-torn strife going on that a lot of them end up in Nebraska, some of them in Lincoln, some of them in Omaha as refugees. And he had sustained an injury, a head injury that has diminished him quite a bit. And I didn't know his story, but I would see him kind of bouncing around North Omaha in some pretty rough places that I would be in the course of talking to people and taking photographs. And while I was homeless, and I thought, man, that guy's a mess. And I kind of had made up my mind that I would never photograph him. It was just too heartbreaking to see. But then one day, as luck would have it, he kind of walked up to me and asked me for a cigarette. And that's when I talked to him, and I took a photograph of him that ended up on the front page. And that photograph is very powerful, and his story is very powerful. He was a bit of a hero in a group called the Lost Boys that are these Somali refugees, and they look after him. But again, his story doesn't end well. And there was another gentleman named Anthony who's from Trinidad who may or may not be on the cover of the book. And I would see him around downtown Omaha, and he and I became very good friends. And he was just a really, really nice man from Trinidad. And I just enjoyed his company greatly. And I think that he eventually drifted back out to New York City. But yeah, every person that I've photographed and talked to has a unique story, and they're all people. They're all people with a past and a story. And oftentimes, homeless folks are just people who are one life away. I'd like to say that people oftentimes are one life event away from being homeless.
What a beautiful story, man. Just an absolute beautiful story. And it's completely divinely guided. Your whole life up to this moment has just been a series of, God guiding you through this thing, and every experience that you've had has been necessary as your journey, because if it wasn't, you would have gone a different route. There's so many, especially being in that sort of an industry, there's so many opportunities that come your way. You knew so many people. The network is massive. And to end up in the streets, it was just, that was where you needed to be. And now moving forward, gosh, how old are you now?
I'll be 56 April 1st.
So it's like you're 56 and this is the beginning.
It literally is.
Right?
Literally is. Life essentially in some capacities it began at 50, but essentially began at just prior to 54. And because at this point I can be the person that God intended me to be. This is apparently the person that the reason I was put on earth was to be of service to others in some way, shape, or form. So be it through showing individuals in poverty and homelessness as people who need help, and people who are not unlike people who are not homeless, or whether it's to work with addicts and alcoholics. It's very satisfying to be of service to others. And speaking of the homeless experience, I'd like to read just a tiny bit more for you, if I may.
Please.
If you have somebody to wander around with, you can look at the moon on a cold birthday and not feel 238,900 miles away. You can wander around by yourself if you want, and for as long as you like, as long as somebody's waiting for you back home. That's why when you're in a band, traveling couch to couch in flats where windowsills and Kitchen tables and toilet lids microscopically dusted with cocaine serve as accidental pillows to the falling consciousness. Such a life feels fine, and your friends are there. They're your friends. Your friends will never let you down. You're all young and beautiful on a riot campaign to burn the world. Everything feels good, and the moon is a huge friend in the sky egging you on. Other days, later days, when it's only you and your mind and no home to return to, the moon's just a shitty, empty lighthouse. I'm going to live through this. I'm not going to live through this. How will I survive? I don't know, but I'm going to make it.
Man, I almost feel like closing with that.
It would be a good place to close.
Yeah, right? Sure. That is such a strong close. Oh, man.
Well, it works for me.
That book of yours, it was meant to be written. It was meant to be read, and it's going to help a lot of people. And you're absolutely right. You have a purpose here, and it wasn't to kill yourself or live a life of vacuous debauchery. It was to take everything that has happened to you and help others and be of service. It's the same calling I have. It's the same reason why, I'm on this podcast. I'm doing this podcast. You're a very active member in the Facebook, the SHAIR Private Accountability Group, and I really appreciate that. I love having you in there, and it's what makes this thing work. Each other. We cannot do this thing alone.
Absolutely. It's the fellowship. And again, thank you very much for all you do. Your podcasts just mean the world to me. Again, I'm not able to get to meetings as often as I like due to my work and due to the hours that I work. And so for me, recovery podcasting is a great service, and your podcast in particular is a great example of that. And the recovery accountability group on Facebook is a great place for people to be. It's a fellowship, and people can help each other through these issues, so we can do it together.
Yes, no question about it. And the important thing is that's one of the reasons why I put it out there, because people like yourself that, depending on where you live or depending on, the accessibility you have to meetings, it becomes a challenge. So putting on the headsets, listening, if you were able to go to a speaker meeting every single day, some of the most powerful meetings I've been to are speaker meetings where people are telling their story and you're listening to the grit and the grind and the wreckage, and you're like, man, I get it. I so get it. And you leave that meeting feeling 10 feet tall.
Oh, without question. Yeah, you feel the connection. And it's inspiring, and it gives you experience, strength, and hope, and that's so essential. And again, just like you said, if you're fortunate enough to have some headphones, just putting those headphones on and going into that world, going into another person's story, just gives you that experience, strength, and hope that will really power you through, because it shows that this can be done, and that this is a highly doable thing. It can be very difficult at times. And that's why I'm very proud of the clients that I work with who are working their way through their recovery process. It is a journey that's very rewarding, and it's well worth the extraordinary fortitude that it takes to get out the other side. But once you're there, you're the person that God intended you to be.
Hands down. Absolutely. Sam, what's the best way for our listeners to find you and reach out to you?
Well, they can find me also on Facebook. I have a page for the book, Street Life Fragments, which kind of refers to the fragmented timeline. It's a type of modern literature, and it kind of serves a purpose with regard to the photographs being fragments of my experience. So you can find me at Street Life Fragments on Facebook.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah, feel free. Anyone out there who's struggling, they can feel free to reach out to me, and I know they're able to go to the accountability group and join that. A couple of my clients have already done that.
I'm going to make sure to have that on the show notes, folks. So check it out. Go to the show notes, click on the link. That's where you can find Sam. All right, Sam, let's start closing up for the newcomer. Are you ready?
I am ready, Omar.
Okay, 5 questions coming at you to inspire the newcomer. Let's do this. Number 1, what was keeping you from getting clean or staying clean when you first got introduced to recovery?
I think, as we talked about earlier, I think it's guilt, shame, and fear. Guilt and shame that keep you from working a healthy process, a healthy recovery, a healthy way of working through resolving the core issues that led you down the dark path that you may have walked down or been cast into. And then just the fear of living a different life, a fear of change, a fear of having to address those issues, without illegal chemical assistance or unduly acquired chemical assistance. Now, if you end up in a recovery program and you're needing to take some help, legitimate help through the pharmaceutical industry, that's fine. But the combination of working a 12-step program, we do a lot of DBT, CBT, medication, and 12-step. Healthy eating, healthy diet, exercise. These are all components of an effective recovery program. So for me, it was guilt, shame, and fear, I would say.
Yes, and that's what keeps so many of us, that absolute terror of what is my life going to be like when I'm not intoxicated. Like all the pain that's associated, that it prevents us, from even for one moment to be off of the narcotics. And also a good point about a healthy lifestyle. That's another thing that takes work. Eating right, exercise, sleeping well, taking care of yourself takes work. And so many of us are lazy. We've been taking drugs for so long that instant gratification. If I want to be up, I take something. If I want to go down, I take something, and I don't have to work for it. But to actually change your lifestyle, that's where the work comes in. I think it's a very important component when we're coming in initially, that even though all the most important thing is you stop doing drugs and alcohol, the sleeping and the diet are so key.
Oh, it's just the beginning. Getting sober and getting off drugs and alcohol are just the beginning. It's things like DBT skills, 12-step meetings. Those are essential. And then the next component, of course, is the exercise and diet. Modifying, getting that sugar out of your diet, getting to a more plant-based diet. However you do it, just staying away from the fast food, beginning to become conscious of what you're eating and putting into your body. Beginning to treat your body right, because it's mind, body, spirit. Absolutely.
Yep. What is DBT and CBT?
Well, CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy, and DBT is an offshoot of it. It was created for, initially, Marshall Enahan created it for people with certain disorders, borderline personality disorder, most notably. DBT is dialectical behavioral therapy. It's essentially gives you tools to work through all manner of things in a more effective manner, as opposed to ways that are not helpful.
Okay, so it's behavioral therapy.
Exactly.
Okay, all right, excellent. And number 2, at what point did you have a spiritual awakening, that aha moment in recovery when you accepted that you were powerless over drugs and alcohol, but for the first time had developed the hope that you could recover?
Well, this is an interesting story. When I had that moment, I was sitting in a bar not far from the homeless shelter in Omaha called the Happy Bar. I can assure you it is not a happy place.
Right?
Oh, man. I mean, think about it. The Happy Bar. That's where I hit my bottom. But literally, I'd been to detox at Campus for Hope in Omaha, which is now actually the detox program is taken over by the University of Nebraska Medical Center, I believe, and the company that I work for, Centerpoint. We've actually taken over the recovery services from Catholic Charities at that location, which is right by the homeless shelter, which is literally at the end of that street. It's dead ends right into the detox. And so I was there a couple times detoxing, and the people there took an interest in me, the techs, and everybody took a great interest in me because I think they knew that I really, truly wanted to get better. But I was struggling, I relapsed a couple times and I was having a tough time of it, but I was really trying and eventually got there. But I was self-detoxing. I was too embarrassed to go back to campus. I was too embarrassed to go back to the hospital. And I detoxed in a hotel room where I had hit my bottom, where I ended up literally walking out of that hotel room with $50 in my pocket, heading to the homeless shelter. So I ended up, I had to go to a Walmart to pick up some money. Somebody had generously bought some photographic prints in order to keep me in that hotel. I went up there to pick up the money, and I was a wreck. I was shaking in a manner. I was having delirium tremens in a manner that you just wouldn't believe. I could not illustrate for you how badly my hands were shaking in a way that would, it's just unbelievable. So I decided to give myself a break and go ahead and put a little booze into my body, because I was really afraid I was going to have a seizure at that point. So after I collected the money, I stopped into the Happy Bar, and it was late afternoon. I sat in the bar, and at that point, there's only a handful of guys in there, a couple of flight controllers from nearby Eppley Airport, and ConAgra executive type people that would just saunter in there and have a couple quick cocktails and some healthy conversation, watch a little bit of stock market returns, and then go ahead and leave that place. And it's actually kind of a cute place. It's old place from the 20s or 40s or something that's grandfathered in, and it's like walking back in time. And so we had some, erudite individuals, had some decent conversation, but I stayed in there. Somehow I managed to get the whiskey. I should have just asked for a straw, because my hands were shaking so badly that I literally could not. The first shot of whiskey I could not get to my mouth, and it was kind of embarrassing. And I think the bartender even took notice of it, to the point where he kind of turned his head away enough so that I could let my shaking hands kind of get it to my mouth as I was spilling it all over the place. But I managed to get a little booze in me and start to have the shaking go away, and the DTs. And so I spent a couple hours in there talking to people. But as they filtered out and the new clientele filtered in, it was bad. And the guy that was sitting next to me had went from being a kind of collegiate professorial type of guy with intelligent conversation to being a raving maniac, singing along with the jukebox and very much out of pitch. So that was not pleasant, not a pleasant experience. And you've never lived till you've endured the Eagles endlessly being butchered by a drunk in the Happy Bar in Omaha, Nebraska, near a homeless shelter. It's something that I would not wish on anyone. But during that moment, there was a sliver of mirror below the high definition television and the booze bottles. And in that sliver of mirror, I could see myself for exactly who I was. I was a middle-aged train wreck, unhealthy. I looked like shit. The guy next to me was drunk out of his mind, acting insane. And as bad as it was at that moment, I knew it could get worse. And at that point, I literally broke down and prayed in the bar, not out loud, but to myself. I'd never, I'd had my questions with religion and spirituality up to that point, but I prayed in a way I'd never prayed before. And I prayed to God. I said, please let the old me die tonight and the new me be reborn tomorrow, if you're willing. If you'll keep me alive this last night, please remove this obsession. And, that was when it happened. I mean, I prayed from the bottom of my heart, and my prayers were answered. And I have not, and this is amazing, I have literally not had an urge to drink since then.
That was the last drink you had?
That was the last drink I had.
In the Happy Bar?
In the Happy Bar.
Wow. And it ended up actually being kind of a happy bar.
In a sense, it was. In a sense, it was.
But you know what? That's powerful. More power. Your story is just unbelievable. It is a book. There's no question about it. But I've had that same experience, that drop to your knees, whether you're on your knees or not, that absolute, irreprehensible demoralization. You're sitting in that moment and you're beaten. You are absolutely beaten. And all you have left is just to pray to a God that you have not prayed to in a very long time, but like differently. Not like get me out of this, make my house stop racing. I promise I'm not going to get high tomorrow. The usual bullshit. But when you hit that bottom and you ask for help, it's amazing how God he just comes in with all the troops, man. It's amazing.
It is. It really is. And the thing is, too, that no matter how you couch your higher power and spirituality, no matter how you choose to look at it and embrace it, it's always there for you. It's like a force that will always move for the better in your life once you acknowledge it and accept it. But you just kind of have to get out of the way and let it take its course, because God is, however you refer to it, if God is the term you care to use, as many do, God is always there for you. You just pushed it away. You pushed God away. God has always been there for you.
Amen, brother. Oh, could not agree
HP,
more.
baby.
HP, baby. Nice.
Yeah.
Woo. I don't throw that enough in the interviews as I should. I got to put some more HP babies in there because it's true. Your story is HP, baby.
Fantastic. HP, baby.
All right. So what, number 3, do you have a favorite book you would recommend to a newcomer that you read in early recovery?
Well, I've got a few recommendations. Now, the first one is not necessarily for a newcomer, although I think anyone could get something out of it. For newcomers, I think obviously the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. When you finish reading it for the first time, read it a second time. When you finish it a second time, read it a third time. It'll never get old. It'll never stop serving you. So that's what I would recommend to the newcomer. But for people who just enjoy reading and enjoy recovery and who love the recovery lifestyle, a book that I would highly recommend by a great author named Nick Flynn is a book called Another Bullshit Night in Suck City. It also has another title. It was made into a movie with Paul Dano and Robert De Niro. Just a fantastic movie, and Nick's wife, Lily Taylor, the actress, makes an appearance in it, and he makes an appearance, a little cameo, and I didn't know what he looked like, but I watched the movie, and there was an AA meeting in the movie, and there was a guy in it, and I said, that's Nick Flynn, and sure enough, it was. So he makes a quick appearance, but that movie, Being Flynn, which comes from the book Another Bullshit Night in Suck City, is just a great movie, and it involves homelessness and alcoholism addiction. And it's basically Nick's journey through dealing with his family issues and his complex relationship with his father, who ends up being homeless. Nick ends up working in a homeless shelter in Boston, and it's a true story. And Nick's father ends up at that homeless shelter, and they end up reuniting. And he addresses his issues that he had with addiction and alcoholism during the course of the book. But he is just a world-class, phenomenal writer beyond any description I could give. One of my favorite authors, and I think that book is very noteworthy. And then some of the books that your most recent guest mentioned, Dry and Drinking a Love Story, I'd highly recommend those to people who just love to read and love the recovery lifestyle. Those are great books. And then there's also a book by a gentleman, he has several books, but a book by a gentleman that works up at Hazleton called Broken, My Story of Addiction and Redemption by William Cope Moyers, Bill Moyers' son. I think that's a fantastic read.
Beautiful, beautiful. These are great suggestions. Thank you, Sam.
You're very welcome, Omar. Beautiful.
All right, so number 4, what is the best suggestion you have ever received?
Boy, there's so many, but I guess suit up and show up. You know, just get it together and be consistent. Stick with your recovery. Stick with the program, whatever program that may be that works for you, and just maintain that discipline. Be active in your recovery. And I guess being active in your recovery is another piece of advice that I received. I wouldn't have anything more specific than that, but just find what works for you and make it your life, make it an integral part of your daily life.
Beautiful. And then number 5, if you could give our newcomers only one suggestion, what would that be?
Oh boy, one suggestion. I'm going to go out on a limb and narrow it down to go to a meeting. You know, go to a meeting. Do whatever it takes. Get help. You know, get help no matter where you find it. Connect with some sort of resources and get help.
Beautiful.
and stick with it. You can do it. That's the thing. I did it, and you can do it. Anyone that hears my voice during the course of this or yours, you can do this. It's challenging, and it's the most rewarding thing you'll ever do.
There's no question about it. No question about it. Sam, wow. Thank you so much for joining us. Your story is absolutely amazing.
Thank you for having me, Omar. I really appreciate it.
It's been an honor, brother. It's been an honor. I can't wait for this one to launch. It's awesome. Oh, by the way, I'm going to need a few pictures from you. I want to put those on the show notes, some of your favorites.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to do that. Well, thank you so much, Omar. It's been absolutely a pleasure. I'm a big fan of the podcast. I'm a big fan of all the work you do. Your service to the recovery community is immense and notable and laudable.
Well, like I like to say, it's an honor and a privilege to be of service, and HP, baby.
HP, baby.
All right, we have now reached the end of our show. Thanks for joining us. And as we say here in Costa Rica, pura vida.
Pura vida.
Thank you for joining us on the SHAIR Recovery Podcast. To check out the show notes page on this interview or to thank our guests for sharing their story, go to www.theshairpodcast.com. While you're on the website, don't forget to sign up for our free newsletter to stay up to date on the latest news, podcasts, and interviews. Want to be one of our guests and share your story? Then go to our website and click on the Share Your Story button. We share our inspiring recovery stories every Tuesday, so subscribe to our show on iTunes or Stitcher Radio to get your free weekly download. We'll see you then. The opinions shared on this show reflect those of the individual speaker